Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your chosen sources, we sift through them, and really distill the most potent insights, cutting through the noise to get to what truly matters.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're embarking on quite a fascinating journey, I think. It's across a really rich landscape of ideas.
Yeah, it really is.
We're spanning everything from, the intricate dance of business strategy, financial markets,
leadership principles.
right, leadership, and even the subtle, often unseen forces of, human psychology.
That's right. And we've pulled together a truly diverse collection of material. What's really cool, I think, is how it all connects.
Yeah.
Yeah, it offers this compelling tapestry, you could say, of how individuals and organizations, too, navigate really complex challenges. So our mission for you, our listener, is basically to extract those surprising facts, those foundational nuggets, things that will genuinely make you feel well-informed.
And maybe spark a few aha moments.
Hopefully. Yeah, exactly, about how the world around us, really operates.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to dive deep into some truly influential concepts today. We're talking the anatomy of sustainable competitive advantage, the hidden psychological traps in financial markets.
Are always fascinating.
Definitely. And then the essential traits of effective leaders, and even the fundamental mechanics of human persuasion. How our behavior shapes, collective outcomes.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. So let's get started.
Well,
Okay, let's unpack this first idea, this concept of power in business.
right.
And we're not talking about, sheer dominance or brute force here.
No, not necessarily.
It's more about power as a source of sustainable competitive advantage. And our sources seem to highlight that this true power, it isn't just about operational excellence.
That's a key point.
Even though operational excellence is obviously incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
It seems like a much more nuanced concept, right? It goes beyond just being really good at what you do day to day.
It absolutely does. And what's fascinating here is how often that operational excellence gets, misunderstood as a source of relative competitive advantage.
How so?
Well, one source, it draws from this 1990 Science article about experience curve data. And it showed that, about 60% of over 100 examples had these consistent learning curves.
Meaning costs went down over time.
Exactly. Costs fell to maybe 70, 85% with each doubling of cumulative production. So the data clearly indicates consistent internal gains over time. Companies get better at their own processes. They become more efficient.
Okay, that makes sense.
However, and this is the really crucial distinction, these gains don't inherently create a cost difference between different firms at a single point in time.
Okay.
If all your competitors are also realizing similar year-to-year gains in efficiency, you might be improving internally, sure, but you're not necessarily pulling ahead of them.
Right. So everyone's getting better together.
Pretty much. So while you might become incredibly efficient at producing something, your rivals could be doing the exact same thing. And that effectively cancels out any relative cost advantage you thought you were building.
So simply getting better internally, improving your own processes, that's not enough to build lasting power against rivals, it sounds like. Maybe it's a necessary foundation, but definitely not sufficient for true competitive advantage.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. To truly build defensible power, as one source points out, the first step is often invention.
Invention, okay.
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, this could be breakthrough products, obviously, or incredibly engaging brands, or maybe entirely innovative business models.
Got it.
But, and this is critical, that cannot and probably should not be the last step. Invention alone, it's frequently pretty easily imitated.
Right. Someone else sees a good idea.
Yeah, and they copy it. If a company invents something groundbreaking but then fails to build significant protective barriers around it, that initial spark of invention just quickly becomes a commodity.
Like leaving gold out in the open.
Exactly. That's a good analogy. You strike gold, but you just leave it in an open field for anyone to pick up. That completely erodes any potential for lasting power.
Okay, so let's make this concrete. The Netflix example you mentioned earlier.
Right, Netflix. When they first introduced streaming, that was truly revolutionary, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Changed everything.
But imagine if they had only focused on perfecting that streaming technology, just building a superior delivery service around it.
Without the original content?
Without introducing Netflix originals, yeah. They would have been left with an easily imitated commodity business. Their core streaming service, while incredibly innovative at the time, could eventually be replicated by any well-funded media company.
And many tried and did.
They did. So without those exclusive, high-quality Netflix originals, they would have lacked true, enduring power and, long-term value in their business because subscribers could just easily churn to the next best streaming platform.
Which happens all the time now anyway.
It does. So this really highlights the crucial need to be, as the source puts it, ever watchful for power openings amidst that initial spark of invention.
Yeah.
You have to convert those fleeting advantages into something more enduring, more structural.
Building a moat.
Building a moat around that initial innovation.
Exactly.
That really brings the point home. So this power isn't just a general sense of being strong. Our sources give us some concrete examples of what this competitive power actually looks like in practice. Let's take Intel, legendary company.
Intel. Yes. With Intel, we see a clear early mover advantage. And it's rooted in continuous lithography advancement.
Lithography. That's the chip-making process, right? Super complex.
Incredibly complex. It's essentially the highly specialized process of printing these impossibly tiny, intricate circuits onto silicon wafers. We're talking nanometers here.
Yep.
And as each new generation of semiconductors moves to smaller scale features, it enables significant manufacturing cost reductions and performance efficiencies for the chips.
Smaller, faster, cheaper. Pretty much. And Intel, by virtue of its consistently higher demand forecasts, was able to justify the enormous multi-billion-dollar investment needed to move its fabrication facilities, its fabs, to these smaller etch widths sooner than its competitors.
That's a huge bet.
A huge bet, but a strategic one. This capital-intensive move gives them a tangible per-chip cost advantage at any given moment, and that makes it incredibly difficult for rivals to catch up on either price or performance.
So it's not just a temporary gain.
No, it's a clear structural form of competitive power. It's built into their process and their scale.
Okay, and then there are network economies. This is where it gets particularly interesting, I think, because it connects different parts of the tech ecosystem. It shows how value is created beyond just a single product.
Absolutely. It's not just about the chip. It's about the whole integrated experience.
Right.
One source explains this really well. Consumers aren't simply buying chips. They're not even just buying personal computers in isolation.
What are they buying then?
When purchasing a PC, what they're truly acquiring is the ability to do certain tasks. And those tasks are enabled by software applications running on those PCs.
Okay, so hardware and software together.
Exactly. They go hand in glove. They are powerful complements. In the early years of consumer PC sales, because of memory and speed limitations, operating systems and some really crucial applications had to be programmed specifically for a particular processor.
Like Lotus 123.
Exactly. The spreadsheet program that essentially launched the IBM PC, Lotus 123, was written specially for the Intel processor. As was the operating system, MS-DOS, provided by Microsoft.
The famous Wintel duopoly.
It created a powerful dynamic. When other PC makers came online, to be viable, they had to create IBM clones. Otherwise, their machines would have no compatible, widely used programs.
Right, nobody would buy them.
Which, in turn, meant they used Intel or Intel-compatible chips. This is a classic example of network economies in full force.
How so?
Well, the more users there were on the Intel-Microsoft platform, the more software developers targeted that platform, which made the platform even more compelling for users.
A self-reinforcing loop.
A powerful self-reinforcing loop, yes.
So this really shows how interconnected systems can build a formidable moat around a business, right? It's not just about making a better physical product. It's about orchestrating this entire ecosystem that locks in value.
Precisely. These aren't just, operational improvements or clever product innovations. They are fundamental structural advantages. They make it incredibly difficult for competitors to catch up, let alone surpass them.
And this fosters what another source calls strategic flexibility.
Exactly. By making a firm's unique complexity harder for others to match. When a company can not only diffuse its unique routines and specialized knowledge throughout its organization, but also effectively leverage external partners, it creates this deeply woven web of interconnected capabilities.
Which is really hard to replicate.
Profoundly difficult to replicate. Think of a company like Zara, maybe?
Yeah.
Known for its agile fashion supply chain.
Right, fast fashion.
Their unique routines involve constant real-time data collection from stores, rapid design, leveraging small, flexible production batches. They don't just diffuse knowledge, They've institutionalized this culture of rapid iteration.
And they use external partners, too.
Yeah, they leverage external partners, often smaller, local manufacturers, not just for capacity, but for quick prototyping and that hyper-local market responsiveness. So this deep embedding of knowledge, skills, and strategic partnerships acts as a truly robust competitive barrier.
Okay. But even with these insights into building power, businesses can still get trapped, right? Trapped by old ways of thinking. We have sources talking about marketing myopia and red ocean traps. Common pitfalls, it sounds like.
Very common marketing myopia, famously articulated by Theodore Levitt. It's the danger of defining your business by its product rather than by the customer and their underlying evolving needs.
Defining yourself too narrowly.
Exactly. Levitt famously argues there's no such thing as a growth industry. Only business is perceptive enough to spot where future growth actually lies.
Interesting.
And companies fall into what he calls undetected decay by making several critical, often unconscious, assumptions.
Like what?
First, they assume market growth will just continue indefinitely because the population grows. Second, they often believe their product is so fundamentally superior or indispensable that it just can't be surpassed.
Dangerous assumptions.
Very. And third, there's this pervasive tendency to over-focus on production efficiencies and declining unit costs as output rises, often at the expense of truly understanding and responding to evolving market needs.
So marketing gets neglected.
Marketing in its broadest sense, yes, often gets neglected. Think of the railroad industry example you use. They saw themselves in the railroad business.
Not the transportation business?
Exactly, rather than the transportation business. So they missed the rise of cars, planes, trucks.
So it's really about shifting focus from what you make to what the customer actually needs, and constantly asking why customers are choosing you, or maybe more importantly, why they're not choosing you.
That's the core of it.
It sounds so obvious when you say it like that, yet it's clearly a trap many fall into. Can you think of a modern industry where you see this myopia playing out right now?
Yeah.
Maybe less obviously than railroads.
That's a great question. You might think in today's data-rich world this wouldn't happen, but consider parts of the traditional publishing industry.
Okay, books.
Yeah. Many still define themselves by the books they print rather than by the customer's deeper need for, say, information or entertainment or escapism.
Right, the underlying need.
They might optimize print runs and distribution, that's operational excellence, but sometimes miss the boat on new digital formats, interactive storytelling, subscription models, things that cater to how people consume content now.
So they're stuck in the product, not the need.
Could be argued, yes. Stuck in the product, not the need. And another insidious trap is what one source calls the red ocean trap.
Red ocean trap. Sounds ominous.
It describes businesses that reflexively focus on their existing customers and just try to make them happier, which sounds good, right? On the surface.
Yeah, keep your customers happy. Seems basic.
But the problem is, this often drives them to do more of the same for less. It leads to intense competition over incremental improvements and price reductions, all within existing market boundaries.
Fighting over the same pie.
Exactly. In a red ocean, you're competing in existing market space, often bloodying the waters with rivals over market share.
Okay, so to avoid this kind of competitive stagnation, this red ocean scenario, what's the alternative? How do you break out?
Well, to create new demand and truly innovate, a blue ocean strategist, as they call it, must radically shift their focus.
So where?
Instead of just looking at existing customers and trying to satisfy them better, they explore non-customers.
Non-customers, people who don't buy from you.
Yeah, exactly. Those individuals or groups who either refuse to patronize an industry altogether or maybe are underserved by it. These non-customers, not the existing ones, often hold the greatest insights into an industry's true pain points, its unmet needs, its underlying limitations.
Untapped demand.
Vast untapped demand. And this approach, it requires analytical tools, systematic frameworks. It's not just about calls to be brave and entrepreneurial. It explicitly focuses on risk minimization, not risk-taking.
How is it risk minimization? Seems risky going after people who don't buy from you.
Because you're systematically identifying how to create entirely new, uncontested market space. You're not fighting head-to-head. You're creating a new game.
Ah, okay. A blue ocean, less bloody.
Hopefully. And this links directly back to that idea of invention we discussed earlier.
Right.
If you're not constantly inventing new value, new solutions, especially for these non-customers, you're really just optimizing within the existing market. You're just competing in that red ocean.
Which might give you some tactical gains.
Maybe, but it isn't a source of enduring competitive power or breakthrough growth. It's really about looking beyond the current battlefield.
Okay, let's shift gears. Moving into the world of finance. Our sources present this really fascinating tension. Are markets truly rational, like economic theory often suggests?
The efficient market hypothesis.
Right. Or are they profoundly driven by, human quirks, emotions, widespread irrationality? It's a debate that really shapes how we understand booms and busts.
It really is. In efficient market theory, it posits that investors as a whole are rational.
As a whole, that sounds like a qualifier.
It kind of is. The idea is that their collective buying and selling ensures stock prices fairly represent the future prospects of companies, reflecting all available information. The escape hatch for economists, as one source puts it.
Escape hatch.
Yeah, it's that either individual irrationality cancels itself out across the market, for every overly emotional buyer, there's an equally emotional seller,
Right.
or that smart, hyper-rational traders quickly correct any mispricings that might arise from these less rational actors.
So the market mechanism itself cleans things up.
That's the core belief, that even if some individuals make poor decisions, the market mechanism is efficient enough to always price assets correctly, theoretically.
But this theoretical rationality, it doesn't always seem to play out in reality, does it? I mean, we've seen plenty of examples where markets seem anything but rational, sometimes for long stretches.
Indeed, it often doesn't seem that way. While some traders are hyper-rational, very analytical, others are clearly driven by what John Maynard Keynes famously called the gambling instinct.
The gambling instinct.
And the peculiar zest in making money quickly. This means that investment based on genuine long-term expectation, trying to fundamentally value a company based on its future earnings.
The boring stuff.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
It becomes incredibly difficult, and often in the short run less profitable than simply guessing how the crowd will behave.
Or guessing what other people think the crowd will do.
Exactly. It's like Keynes' beauty contest analogy. You're not picking the face you think is prettiest, but guessing which face the judges think is prettiest, or what the other judges think that judge will pick.
It becomes a game about psychology, not fundamentals.
It can. This short-termism and speculative behavior can really dominate for long stretches.
Okay, give us an example.
Well, one source, The Big Short, it vividly describes this intelligent long shot taken in the subprime market by a trader named Greg Lippmann.
Right, the housing crisis.
He didn't just bet against the whole housing market. He specifically targeted AA tranches of CDOs.
CDOs. Collateralized debt obligations.
Yeah.
Complex stuff.
Very complex. Essentially bundles of mortgage-backed securities sliced into different layers, tranches of risk and return. And the AA tranches were considered very safe, almost immune to default.
That's what the ratings agencies said.
Right. The agencies effectively set the odds of their collapse at something astronomical, like 1 in 200, making it seem like a highly unlikely catastrophe.
But Lippmann saw it differently.
He and others like him, they listened to the actual people running the subprime mortgage market, the lenders giving out these ridiculous loans, and they felt the collapse wasn't a long shot at all. It seemed highly probable.
So why the mispricing?
The profound market mispricing was driven by this collective cognitive bias, this belief that nothing so terrible could ever actually happen. Therefore, those safe tranches must be safe.
A failure of imagination.
A failure of imagination combined with institutional momentum and maybe some conflicts of interest too.
Wow, okay. So when it comes to managing risk, our sources offer some stark warnings, but also some practical advice. Moving from these theoretical probabilities to the very real, often devastating consequences of being wrong.
Absolutely. Historically, our sources note that the gross yield premium from junk bonds has more than compensated for actual default experience.
Meaning the extra interest usually covers the defaults.
Over the long term, yes. The higher interest payments offered by these riskier bonds have typically outweighed the losses from companies defaulting. However,
There's always a however.
always, the sources are quick to caution that they are not for insomniacs or for those absolutely dependent on predictable interest payments, given their inherent volatility and how susceptible they are to economic downturns.
So what's the advice?
The core advice: diversify adequately. This highlights that fundamental balance of risk and reward. higher potential returns often come with higher, often less predictable risk. And proper management of that risk through broad diversification is absolutely key.
And the margin of safety seems to be a recurring theme here, almost foundational, especially when uncertainty is high and probabilities are hard to pin down.
Yes, crucial, absolutely crucial. When uncertainty exists, as Nassim Nicholas Taleb explores with his black swans.
Those highly improbable, high-impact events.
Exactly. Events impossible to predict beforehand, but seem obvious in hindsight. When that kind of uncertainty exists, the consequences must dominate the probabilities.
What does that mean exactly? Consequences dominate probabilities.
It means even if an event is seemingly unlikely, if its impact would be catastrophic, you must guard against it. Investors have to guard against loss even when their analysis might be wrong, because the impact of being wrong on an improbable event can be absolutely ruinous.
Because you will be wrong sometimes.
The probability of making at least one significant mistake in an investing lifetime is virtually 100%. You can't control the odds of being wrong, but you can control the consequences of that error by building in a margin of safety, a buffer against the unexpected.
Okay, like not paying full price for something.
That's one way. Or ensuring you have enough diversification that one bad bet doesn't wipe you out.
Got it. So, an example.
Well, think back to 1999. Many investors poured money into dot-com stocks. One survey found nearly 10% of people had at least 85% of their money in internet stocks.
Wow, all in.
Pretty much. The belief was, the internet is the future. These stocks can only go up. By ignoring that fundamental margin of safety, not investing at a significant discount to intrinsic value, or without adequate protection against downside, they failed to protect themselves against the consequences of being wrong.
Even though they thought they knew the probabilities of success.
Exactly. They became so convinced of their own forecasts and the prevailing market narrative that they just neglected to build any buffer against potential downside, even if it seemed unlikely at the time.
A stark lesson.
A very stark demonstration of the danger, focusing only on potential upside without adequate downside protection.
This leads us into a particularly thorny area of finance. Not just market mechanics, but the ethical quagmires, the systemic failures, the things that can turn these risks into widespread crises.
Yeah, the human element and the breakdown.
Especially when institutions are involved. This next insight really highlights that.
We see clear examples of how institutional pressures can lead to really problematic behavior and outright deception sometimes. Take Enron, notorious case. The relentless pressure to meet Wall Street's profit predictions led them to, quote, creating a portrait of a reality that simply didn't exist.
Cooking the books.
Essentially, they notoriously used mark-to-market accounting, which theoretically meant losses from speculative trading or overvalued contracts were supposed to be booked immediately.
It's supposed to be.
Supposed to be. However, showing a massive loss, like over $500 million for a division like Enron Energy Services, EES, would have been catastrophic for a company that CEO Jeff Skilling was constantly boasting about, calling it an exemplar of the new economy.
So the desire to maintain this facade of success for Wall Street, for investors, it just trumped financial reality.
It completely trumped reality, leading to a deliberate misrepresentation of their books.
How did they hide it?
It resulted in increasingly complex accounting obfuscations, special purpose entities, complex derivatives, things that made it incredibly difficult for outsiders to understand the true financial health of the company.
Analysts didn't catch it.
Well, analysts were supposed to dive into a company's financial documents, pore over the footnotes, get past management's assurances, and even to get past accounting obfuscations. But many failed in their core job to analyze.
Why? Too complex. Too much pressure.
Probably a mix. The short sellers, the ones who did dive deep and ask uncomfortable questions, they uncovered a very different, far more troubling story. It really highlighted a systemic institutional failure of many to perform their due diligence. The pressure to conform, to just believe the rosy narrative was immense.
Okay. Another example.
The financial crisis of 2008 offers another stark illustration: moral hazard, institutional failure.
The TARP bailout.
Right. Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson secured $700 billion through the Troubled Asset Relief Program, TARP. He initially promised to use it to buy troubled assets from banks.
But he didn't.
No, he then abandoned that strategy. Instead, billions were given directly to firms like Citigroup and Goldman Sachs.
Just hand it over.
Pretty much. And most egregiously, AIG's staggering $13 billion debt to Goldman Sachs, a direct result of AIG's reckless bets on subprime mortgage loans, was paid off in full by the government. 100 cents on the dollar.
Wow. So Goldman got all this money back from AIG, courtesy of the taxpayer.
Correct. It was widely described as a gift that spared them from recognizing the losses in their subprime mortgage portfolios. It effectively socialized the losses of risky private behavior while privatizing any remaining profits.
That's the very definition of moral hazard, isn't it?
Textbook moral hazard, where one party takes on excessive risk because another party, in this case, the taxpayer, bears the burden if things go wrong.
This connects deeply to that theme of rational decision-making, doesn't it?
It really does.
When consequences are socialized and rewards privatized, the whole incentive structure for rational, risk-averse behavior just breaks down.
Completely. Firms are effectively encouraged to take on excessive risk, knowing that if things go really wrong, the taxpayer might bear the burden. It distorts the very fabric of market incentives.
All right, let's shift gears again, now focusing on leadership. Our sources suggest there's a crucial distinction between simply managing and truly leading.
A really important distinction.
They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
And understanding that difference seems vital for anyone in a position of responsibility, from, a team lead all the way up to a CEO.
Absolutely. Management, as one source highlights, typically focuses on control, efficiency, rules. It's about maintaining the status quo, optimizing existing processes, making sure things run smoothly.
Doing things right.
Doing things right, exactly. Leadership, however, is more about providing direction, articulating purpose, building a strong organizational culture. It's about setting the vision, inspiring people to move towards it.
Doing the right things.
Doing the right things, exactly. The two are often conflated, but they require different skill sets, different mindsets.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, one source mentions an oil company president. He recognized he was deep into management, spending all his time on operations, reports, controls, just bogged down in the day-to-day.
Okay.
So he made this deliberate choice to withdraw from management in order to truly lead.
How did he do that? What did he do instead?
He delegated the day-to-day operations and focused instead on articulating a clear vision, fostering a strong culture, and the result, doubled revenues, quadrupled profits for his company.
Wow. That's significant.
But it was a difficult transition. He mentioned withdrawal pains, resisting the urge to dive back into the details, but ultimately, it was transformative for the organization.
That reminds me of this idea that we each need to be our own chief executive officer in our careers,
Yeah.
taking active responsibility for our own path.
Precisely. Peter Drucker, in Managing Oneself, really emphasizes this. Personal managing oneself is paramount in today's knowledge economy.
Why?
Well, he argues most people are surprisingly wrong about their own strengths. They might know what they're not good at, maybe, but even then, often incorrectly. Drucker insists you can perform only from strength.
So figure out what you're good at.
Yes. Knowing your strengths and, equally important, your weaknesses helps you decide where you belong and how to structure your work to maximize your impact.
How do you figure out your strengths reliably?
He advocates for something called feedback analysis, systematically recording your key decisions and expectations, and then comparing them with the actual outcomes 9 months or a year later to truly understand where your strengths lie.
Sounds like work.
It is, but it's about consciously shaping your life's purpose and career rather than passively leaving it to chance or external circumstances. It's about asking, what should my unique contribution be, and then proactively acting on that.
Okay. Now, our sources also delve into different leadership styles and their effectiveness, suggesting there's no single magic bullet. Leaders need to be adaptable.
Highly adaptable, almost like a chameleon adapting to its environment, as you said. Daniel Goleman, in Leadership That Gets Results, describes 6 distinct styles, each with a different impact on organizational climate and ultimately performance.
What are they?
There's the coercive style, do what I tell you. The authoritative, come with me, setting a vision. The affiliative, people come first, building harmony. Then democratic, what do you think? Building consensus, pace setting, do as I do now, setting high standards, and coaching, try this, focusing on development.
6 styles. That's a lot to juggle.
It is. And the research shows the most effective leaders don't just excel at one style. They master 4 or more, especially authoritative, democratic, affiliative, and coaching.
And they switch between them.
Yes, they switch flexibly among them depending on the situation, the people involved. This versatility allows them to create the best climate and achieve superior business performance. No single style is always best. A diverse toolkit is key.
So using the wrong style could backfire.
Definitely. For example, that pace-setting style Might work well in a crisis with highly motivated experts, but it can burn out a less experienced team really quickly.
So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. Leaders need that diverse toolkit, understanding when to pull out each tool.
Exactly. Take the coaching style, for instance. It focuses on developing direct reports, helping them identify their unique strengths and weaknesses, aligning their personal aspirations with organizational goals.
Sounds like it takes time.
It does. It may not scream bottom line results in the short term, that's often a slower run, but it demonstrably delivers them in the long run by building capability, fostering commitment, creating a more engaged workforce.
But it relies on something foundational, right?
Absolutely. It relies on trust. And as one source indirectly highlights, the idea that performance will always be rewarded is this fundamental covenant between employees and an organization.
The promise of fairness.
Right. And when this covenant was broken in one company mentioned where internal politics and favoritism seemed to override merit, it led to deep demotivation, cynicism, a sense that meritocracy had failed.
So coaching is great, but
it must be supported by a fair, transparent system of recognition and reward. Otherwise, that trust just dissolves and the coaching becomes ineffective.
which brings us back to trust. Trust and cooperation emerge as absolutely critical components for organizational success. How do effective leaders actively cultivate these, especially when asking people to change, which is hard?
Well, one source, Blue Ocean Leadership, details this interesting leadership fair process. It's specifically designed to build trust and buy-in for change.
Leadership fair. What happens there?
In these fairs, they discuss as-is and to-be leadership profiles, but crucially, only at the aggregate level.
Aggregate, meaning not individual feedback.
Exactly. Individual leaders' strengths and weaknesses aren't singled out publicly. Instead, they examine the overall organizational leadership profile, the collective strengths, the collective gaps.
Ah, okay, so everyone's in it together.
Precisely. This approach makes individuals more open to change because they feel that everyone is in the same boat. It fosters this vital sense of psychological safety, shared purpose, and this fair process confers trust and hence voluntary cooperation.
Because people feel it's transparent, collective, not just them being targeted.
Exactly. They feel part of a shared effort to improve.
This sounds like it's really about radical transparency and shared understanding, ensuring everyone feels invested in that journey of improvement.
It absolutely is. And following these aggregate discussions, leaders are then charged with passing the message along to their direct reports, explaining how the new leadership profiles will help everyone be more effective, contribute more meaningfully.
And getting feedback.
Crucially, yes. These subsequent meetings involve gathering feedback from direct reports on how well their leaders are making the transition, with comments illustrated by specific examples.
Asking employees to critique their boss.
That sounds awkward.
It can be unnerving at first, as the source says, both for the employees giving the critique and for the bosses hearing it, but it's vital for progress. This mechanism provides a safe channel for honest upward feedback, which is otherwise notoriously difficult to get.
Right. People are usually afraid to speak up.
Exactly. And without this trust in the process, trust in the people implementing it, employees will just devote their energy to protecting their position and fighting over turf rather than going the extra mile.
They'll just do the bare minimum.
Right. They'll stick to the letter of their contract, not the spirit of innovation and collective endeavor. This links directly to the 5 dysfunctions of a team, doesn't it? That whole model.
It really does. Which posits that a fundamental lack of trust is the root cause of so many team failures.
Right. Without trust.
You can't have genuine conflict, the healthy kind, for problem solving, which then hinders true commitment to decisions, makes peer-to-peer accountability impossible, and ultimately it prevents the team from focusing on collective results.
It all starts with trust.
It does. And this Blue Ocean leadership process seems designed to proactively build that trust from the ground up, hopefully allowing for healthier team dynamics and, demonstrably higher performance.
Okay. Moving on. How do effective leaders challenge their teams? Encourage continuous improvement, even when it involves uncomfortable truths or difficult conversations. Delivering critical feedback without causing resentment is tricky.
It's very tricky. And radical candor, as one source terms it, is highlighted as essential for being a kick-ass boss without losing your humanity.
Radical candor. What does that mean in practice?
It involves significant emotional labor, actually. It requires leaders to cultivate strong self-awareness and the ability to give direct, honest feedback while simultaneously showing that you care personally about the individual.
So it's a balance. Challenge directly, care personally.
Exactly that balance. Creating a productive dialogue rather than triggering resentment or defensiveness. It's sort of like saying, look, I care about you, and because I care, I'm going to tell you something difficult that I think will help you grow.
So it's about caring enough to challenge directly, rather than avoiding those difficult conversations out of maybe a misguided sense of kindness or just wanting to be liked.
Which ultimately does a disservice to the person and the team.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this approach, this radical candor, allows for what's called growth management. It helps ensure everyone is moving in the direction of their dreams, fostering collective improvement within the team.
How does it do that? Well, it enables managers to coach high performers effectively, whether they're on steep growth trajectories ready for big leaps or gradual growth trajectories developing more slowly, making sure everyone is pushed towards excellence in a way that's right for them.
And without it.
Without radical candor, managers risk failing the people who report to them by not giving them the feedback they desperately need to grow and advance their careers. Or they risk being perceived as not tough enough, which can undermine their leadership effectiveness and the team's respect for them.
Can you give an example of radical candor in action?
The source recounts this situation where a manager named Mikey rolled her eyes during a discussion about team progress. Kind of subconsciously, maybe, but it effectively blunted the team's excitement about her own contributions.
Okay. So what did the boss do?
The need for radical candor was clear. The manager needed to address her nonverbal communication directly, but with care. Perhaps saying something like, Mikey, I noticed you rolled your eyes just then, and it makes me feel like you're not fully on board. What's going on?
Direct, but not accusatory.
Exactly. This direct but caring approach brings her more effectively and genuinely into the team process. Ignoring it would have just allowed a dysfunctional behavior to fester, undermining trust, collective commitment, and ultimately hurting Mikey's own development and reputation too.
And this kind of clear, courageous communication, it's critical for avoiding other problems too, right? Like job slip, where responsibilities get fuzzy.
Absolutely. Unclear responsibilities or job slip can leave dangerous gaps in execution and accountability. Radical candor helps ensure roles and expectations are constantly clarified, performance is openly discussed, ambiguities are quickly resolved.
And also for pushing information up the chain.
Yeah, that connects to the extreme ownership principle of leading up the chain. If your boss isn't making a timely decision or providing needed support, the onus is on the subordinate leader to figure out how they can better convey critical information.
So don't just wait or complain.
Right. Tactfully push situational awareness upwards. Ensure leaders have the context they need to make effective decisions. Both concepts, radical candor and leading up, really underscore the vital importance of clear, honest, courageous communication for effective organizations and shared accountability.
Okay, let's talk about influence. When we discuss influence, we often think about, overt tactics, specific techniques. But our sources seem to delve deeper, touching on the fundamental human desires, the unconscious states of awareness, the things that make persuasion even possible in the first place.
Yeah, it's about understanding the inner workings of the human mind, how we're wired, essentially.
Right.
It's critical to understand that advertising, for example, isn't about creating mass desire from scratch. That's a common misconception.
So ads don't make us want things we didn't want before.
Not fundamentally. Instead, as breakthrough advertising explains, it focuses it onto your product.
Yeah.
It identifies permanent human forces, the desire for security, belonging, health, financial gain, things like that.
Basic human drives.
Basic human drives. And forces of change, new trends, shifting social norms to channel those existing, deeply ingrained desires towards a particular offering. It taps into what Robert Cialdini, the psychologist of influence, describes as fixed action patterns or click-whir responses.
Like whir?
Yeah, where certain triggers can elicit these automatic, almost reflexive reactions in us. And critically, the prospect's state of awareness is a huge factor for crafting effective communication, especially headlines.
State of awareness. You mean how much they already know?
Exactly. Are they most aware they know your product, its benefits, they already want it? Or do they know the product but don't yet want it? Or are they completely unaware of the product, maybe even unaware of the underlying problem it solves? Each state dictates a different approach.
So it's really about meeting people exactly where they are psychologically,
Yeah.
not trying to force a message on them, and understanding those fundamental psychological triggers.
Precisely. Headlines, for instance, shouldn't always try to sell the product directly. Sometimes their main job is simply to sell the remainder of the ad itself.
How? By giving words to a hidden dream the reader already has. Or maybe exploiting a hidden fear. This is a subtle yet powerful form of persuasion, often tapping into those Cialdini principles we just mentioned.
Like scarcity.
Exactly. If you highlight a limited time offer, you're leveraging the principle of scarcity. That triggers a sense of urgency, makes the thing seem more valuable because it might soon be unavailable.
Or social proof.
Or, if your ad hints at an exclusive club or a better life others are enjoying, you might subtly be building commitment and consistency in the reader's mind, encouraging them to take a small step towards that desired identity, which makes them more likely to take bigger steps later.
Interesting.
The ultimate goal isn't just instilling that initial desire, but building conviction,
Right.
strengthening the belief that the product will do what the prospect wants.
Making them believe it works for them. Right. This is what one source calls reason why copy. Providing logical, compelling reasons, proof points that justify the purchase, fulfill the expressed desire. It moves beyond just initial attraction to solidifying belief, often by preempting objections, building a rational case right on top of those emotional triggers.
Okay. And beyond these explicit persuasion tactics, human connection, identification, they play a huge role too, right? It's often underestimated. How we relate to ideas, products, other people.
Absolutely. It's about more than just logic. It's deeply rooted in our social nature. We see modern examples of how trust, a cornerstone of connection, is rapidly and, economically achieved in today's digital landscape.
Like PayPal.
Exactly. Services like PayPal facilitate global transactions by creating this layer of trust and security that might otherwise be totally absent between unknown parties.
Or LinkedIn.
Similarly, platforms like LinkedIn provide transparency, verification, and business relationships. Makes it easier to vet potential suppliers, partners, employees across the world. These mechanisms build what Cialdini would call social proof.
Seeing that others use it, or that someone is reputable.
Right. It demonstrates that others have successfully used these services, or that a person is part of a reputable network. That instills confidence. They facilitate connections that ultimately lead to action. We're more likely to comply when we see others have done so safely or successfully.
And even in personal interactions, like that Benjamin Franklin example, helping young beginners in the printing business. That initial act of generosity, born out of gratitude, it made him more ready to assist others later on.
Yeah, that highlights the deeply ingrained human tendency towards reciprocity and the formation of social bonds. Franklin's experience perfectly demonstrates Cialdini's principle of reciprocity.
The urge to return a favor.
Exactly. When someone gives us something, we feel this obligation to return the favor. It's not just a simple quid pro quo, it's a powerful social mechanism. Fosters cooperation, mutual aid.
And in leadership.
Similarly, in leadership, creating emotional bonds and harmony is identified by Daniel Goleman as a distinct and powerful leadership style. This taps directly into Cialdini's principle of liking.
We prefer to say yes to people we like.
Exactly. We are far more likely to be influenced by people we like, people who are similar to us, or people who pay us genuine compliments. When leaders foster these emotional bonds, when people feel that sense of connection and trust, they will go the extra mile. Not just out of obligation, but out of genuine commitment, a desire to help those they like.
That emotional resonance is powerful.
A powerful, almost invisible force in human behavior, far beyond simple rational calculation. And of course, the principle of authority is always at play too.
Deferring to experts or people in charge.
Right. We are more likely to comply with requests from perceived authority figures, whether they're experts, leaders, even just people in uniform sometimes. That deference to perceived authority is deeply ingrained.
This is truly fascinating, especially as we dive into the limits of our own understanding and prediction. Particularly when it comes to human behavior, which is just so fundamentally complex. We can't always predict the future, can we? No matter how much we know.
No. One source, talking about human behavior in the Black Swan, puts it starkly. If I can predict all of your actions, then you may not be as free as you think you are. This profound stumbling block makes projecting the future exceptionally difficult when social matters are involved. The very idea of human free will inherently complicates any deterministic model of the future.
We're not just robots responding to inputs.
Exactly. We are not automata responding solely to environmental stimuli. Our choices, our agency, introduce this irreducible element of unpredictability. Even with all the data in the world, human ingenuity, creativity, simple individual deviation. It can all throw a wrench in the most sophisticated predictions.
So our free will complicates predictability, even for those with extensive knowledge or sophisticated models. It's almost like the more we know about the past, the more we realize how little we can truly guarantee about the future.
And furthermore, from a purely statistical perspective, we do not know the statistical properties of events until after the fact.
What does that mean?
It means, given a set of past observations, plenty of statistical distributions can correspond to the exact same realizations. But each of those possible distributions would extrapolate differently into the future.
So the past doesn't give you a single clear path forward.
Not necessarily. This inverse problem becomes even more acute in the presence of nonlinearities or non-parsimonious distributions.
Okay, jargon alert. Non-linearities. Non-parsimonious.
Fair enough. Think of it like trying to predict the path of a feather in a chaotic wind versus predicting a bowling ball rolling down a smooth lane.
Okay, feather versus bowling ball.
The feather's path is nonlinear. Tiny changes in the wind make huge differences in where it ends up. Non-parsimonious distributions basically means there are just too many variables, too many possible explanations for its movement, making it almost impossible to pinpoint the exact rules governing its flight.
And human behavior is more like the feather.
Often, yes. When human behavior and complex social systems are involved, the number of possible models that fit the past data just explodes, making reliable forward prediction incredibly challenging. The system isn't simply following a predictable straight line. The past doesn't perfectly determine the future, especially in complex systems involving human action.
This idea of unpredictability, it's vividly evident in finance too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. As one source, the Intelligent Investor notes, the natural tendency of trends to reverse over time, often called regression to the mean.
What goes up must come down eventually.
Kind of. And also, the rapid adoption of the stock-picking scheme by large numbers of people can quickly spoil all the fun of those who got there first.
Meaning a strategy stops working once everyone knows about it.
Exactly. What seems like a predictable trend or a profitable strategy quickly dissipates as more people adopt it, because their actions alter the very conditions that made it profitable in the first place. It mirrors that non-linear, unpredictable nature of human-driven systems, where collective awareness changes the game itself.
Okay, sometimes the way we frame problems, the analogies we use, they can lead us significantly astray. Especially, it seems, when we try to apply business logic directly to national affairs.
Yeah, that analogy between a country and a company,
It seems intuitive, maybe, but it has profound limits.
it really does. Paul Krugman's essay, A Country is Not a Company, directly challenges this common belief held by many business executives. The belief that foreign investment naturally leads to trade surpluses for a nation.
That sounds logical, though. Money coming in.
The executive intuition often assumes, yeah, if a company invests abroad, earns profits, the country sees a surplus. But economists, almost without exception, would argue the opposite.
The opposite.
Yes,
Yeah.
that such a country experiencing significant capital inflow, that's the foreign investment coming in, will necessarily run large trade deficits.
Deficits, what?
It has to do with the balance of payments. Essentially, the money flowing in to buy assets has to be balanced by money flowing out to buy goods and services. It's a fundamental macroeconomic identity that's different from how a single company operates. It highlights the pitfalls of misapplying corporate strategy to macroeconomics.
So a country's economy just isn't a giant corporation. It can't be managed with the same tools and assumptions?
Exactly. Corporations are often unified by a core competence, right? A particular technology, a market approach, some central theme that gives them coherence, even if they operate in diverse businesses.
Like Apple's design focus.
Right. Apple has that core competence in design, user experience, spanning hardware, software, services. The U.S. economy, in stark contrast. Krugman describes it as the ultimate nightmare conglomerate.
Nightmare conglomerate.
Yeah. Tens of thousands of utterly distinct lines of business, unified only by national borders. The experience of a successful wheat farmer offers little practical insight for the computer industry.
Which offers little insight for restaurants.
Exactly, which is different from restaurants. This means applying corporate strategy directly to national policy can be deeply misleading, because the underlying structures, the goals, the internal dynamics, they're fundamentally different. A nation's welfare is far more complex than just a company's profit and loss statement. It involves countless social, cultural, political objectives beyond mere profitability.
Okay. Our sources also delve into some historical debates about economic systems, the appropriate role of government intervention. touching on profound ideological differences that still shape policy today.
Big debates. Friedman, for example, in Capitalism and Freedom, highlights full employment and economic growth as being the primary excuses used for widening government intervention, particularly after the trauma of the Great Depression.
The argument being the free market failed.
The argument often presented, yes, is that a private free enterprise economy is inherently unstable and therefore requires government to step in to keep things on an even keel, prevent those recurrent cycles of boom and bust.
And that perspective heavily influenced policy.
Absolutely. It heavily influenced the New Deal, subsequent expansions of governmental power, led to a much larger state role in economic affairs, moving away from the more laissez-faire approach that existed before.
But this view isn't universally accepted. There's a strong counter-argument, isn't there?
Yeah.
About the dangers of too much state control.
Oh, absolutely. A historically significant one. Hayek, for instance, in The Road to Serfdom, warns vehemently against the dangers of all-powerful states and centrally planned economies.
What was his argument?
He argued that a market-based system with its decentralized information, its price signals, it responds optimally to changing conditions in ways that central planning simply cannot. The concept of a just price or fair remuneration for something, a planner can't objectively determine that.
Go ahead.
Because it's always relative to the changing dynamics of supply and demand. In deciding what to produce and how much, the planner also implicitly determines what's fair for producers and consumers, which necessarily means exercising direct control over the conditions of the different people.
Leading to...
Hayek believed this inevitably leads to an erosion of individual freedom, the potential for tyranny, even if the intentions behind the planning are initially noble. He famously argued that the road to serfdom begins with abandoning market principles in favor of centralized economic control, because the state inevitably has to control more and more aspects of life to enforce its plans.
Profound disagreements there. This deep dive also reveals how power, whether it's economic or political, can be wielded, and the consequences when public trust is eroded or ideals are compromised for the sake of achieving goals.
Yeah, we see some stark historical examples of ruthlessness in business, like John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil.
Monopoly power.
While arguably efficient, may be a driver of lower oil prices eventually. His company speeded up the winnowing of unprofitable, less efficient firms, which led to implacable enemies among those driven out of business.
Right. People didn't like being put out of business.
Understandably. His company's relentless expansion, its questionable practices sometimes involving, quote, patent scoundrels, like Henry Clay Pierce, who engaged in things like industrial espionage, bribing railroad employees. It highlights this relentless, almost Hobbesian drive for market control.
Even if Rockefeller claimed ignorance.
Despite his personal claims of unawareness of some of the more extreme practices, the perception of his methods deeply embittered many, led to widespread public resentment, calls for regulation.
And even beyond business. We hear about figures like Robert Moses, the legendary urban planner of New York.
Right. He despised Tammany Hall and its corruption initially, yet he eventually found himself in situations where he compromised his own ideals for the sake of power, for getting his monumental projects built.
How so?
He was known to disregard law enforcement, for instance, speeding with his cavalcade through quiet villages, building public bathhouses despite legal injunctions against them. He essentially transformed a democracy into a system where he alone often made decisions, got his way, regardless of popular sentiment or legal constraints sometimes. Power corrupts.
These examples really underscore a critical challenge for leaders, as our sources suggest.
Yeah.
Maintain an uncompromising emphasis on integrity of character.
Because trust is paramount.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People will not forgive him lack of integrity, nor will they forgive higher management for choosing him. The ultimate breakdown of trust is just fatal for any organization or leader.
Like Enron again.
Consider Enron again, yes. The veil of secrecy around LJM and Raptor, those complex off-balance sheet partnerships, it led employees internally to question accounting propriety consistently and constantly.
So even employees were suspicious.
This internal erosion of confidence, coupled with the external revelations of financial malfeasance, it eventually led to the company's spectacular downfall. Once trading partners, investors, everyone lost confidence in Enron's books, their fundamental integrity, the company was, as the source puts it, essentially toast.
Okay. Bringing us right up to the present. Our sources touch upon new, powerful forms of power and influence emerging in the digital age, with profound societal implications that we're still trying to grapple with. Yeah, the concept of surveillance capitalism.
What is it exactly?
It describes how data exhaust what was once considered just waste material generated from things like Google search. Typos, click patterns, how long you pause on a page.
So if we don't even think about.
Right. That exhaust was reimagined as a critical element for continuous learning and improvement by the system. Every user action, every search, every click, every moment spent on a page is treated as a signal to be analyzed and fed back into the system.
Turning waste into fuel.
Essentially, it transforms passive, incidental data into predictive intelligence, giving unprecedented power to those who control it, power to anticipate and maybe even influence human behavior.
This creates a completely new kind of balance of power, doesn't it? Between search engines, platforms, and us users, fundamentally altering our relationship with technology.
It really does. From a simple service into something far more complex. Initially, you could argue there was a symbiosis. Search needed people to learn from their queries, their interactions.
And people needed search for information.
Desperately needed search, right? This symbiotic relationship enabled Google's algorithms to learn, produce ever more relevant results. But this evolved into the systematic capture, storage, analysis of the byproducts of search queries, turning Google into the gold standard and enabling the creation of these predictive products.
Products that predict our behavior.
Predict and potentially modify. The discussion extends to the potential for pervasive and mobile sensing and computing. Things smartphones, smart homes, everything connected to create a totalistic society directed by instrumentarian power.
Instrumentarian power, what's that?
It refers to a new form of power, one that doesn't rely on brute force or ideological indoctrination like older forms of totalitarianism, but on subtle, constant monitoring and nudging of behavior through digital architecture.
Shaping our choices without us realizing it.
Potentially. Human experience itself becomes the raw material for a system designed to predict and modify behavior, often without explicit user consent or even full awareness, all for the benefit of those who own the means of behavioral modification.
This raises huge questions, doesn't it? About the value of everything. Who benefits from all this data we generate? How is that value created, captured?
Profound questions. It's a fundamental shift in economic power, moving from traditional resource extraction like oil or minerals to the extraction of human experience itself as the raw material. It reflects a profound redefinition of value creation, value capture in this digital age.
Wow. What an incredible journey that was through these diverse, but as you said, deeply interconnected ideas.
Yeah, they really weave together.
From the strategic architecture of competitive advantage, the hidden currents of financial markets.
The art of leadership.
Right, the nuanced art of leadership, and these evolving dynamics of human influence and persuasion. It's just so clear that understanding these forces is crucial for success in, well, pretty much any endeavor.
Indeed. And you've seen how true power isn't just about operational efficiency, though that's important. It's about constant invention, strategic positioning within an ecosystem. You've grappled with that tension between market rationality and, let's face it, human irrationality, and the profound implications of systemic failures like moral hazard.
Yeah.
And you've heard about the critical need for integrity, for adaptable leadership, and for a deep understanding of fundamental human motivations, both the good and the bad, in a world that's increasingly shaped by data.
It seems like whether you're building a company, investing your capital, leading a team, or even just navigating this ever-changing world, a core understanding of these principles is really your most powerful tool.
It absolutely is.
It allows you to anticipate challenges, adapt to changing circumstances, act with greater insight, greater purpose.
Which leads to maybe an important question for you, our listener.
Yeah.
In an age like ours where information is just abundant everywhere, but true wisdom, the ability to apply that information effectively, seems scarce. How will you apply these insights? Not just to understand, but to actively shape the outcomes in your own life, your own work, and maybe even influence the outcomes of those around you.
A powerful question to end on. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thank you.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep making those crucial connections.